The legendary Mr. John Densmore is in the house.
Hey.
How are you, John?
Magic Slim?
Mighty Slim.
A mighty
There's
Slim.
already a Magic Slim.
I'm slim, too. Hey, I'm really happy to be here on graduation day, and especially happy to be at a radio station that I hear from Eli, was the first to play the long version of Light My Fire and some of the longer Doors cuts.
The station was the first place I ever heard it. It was summer of '67. The top 40 stations were playing the single version. There was no FM album rock station here yet, and it was this station where I first heard the long album version of Light My Fire and other tracks from the first Doors album. So blowing my 10-year-old mind.
You guys are progressive, and that's what I like.
Excellent. So tell us about your latest incarnation and.
Well, I mouthed off about being a jazz drummer before the Doors, and I finally am putting my sticks where my mouth has been and have a jazz group. And it's this global village of 7 people, couple folks half my age, which keeps me young. Mm-hmm. Monster musicians will probably be famous jazz players. And we have every color in the band, and we have a woman, so, we got it covered.
Got the bases covered, huh?
It's called Tribal Jazz, and you can see and hear more about it at tribaljazzlive.com, I believe. Yeah.
And especially tonight at, what is it called? Scullers at the Doubletree. We're going to rip it up in this formal jazz club where they eat dinner. We're going to force them to stand up and move.
To choke on their...
Well, it's
salmon, yeah.
It's a jazz group, but it's fuel injected by 2 master African drummers, so you have to move.
Yeah.
How did you end up hooking up with those people?
Well, actually, Art Ellis is the reed player who co-founded the group with me. We both were doing a benefit for our kids' music program at school because, in this era they cut the arts.
Certainly.
They don't figure out that actually music helps math and all that. So we were playing and started talking about our love for jazz and our love for African music, and we talked about putting it together.
You have a... was I going to ask you, the last time you were here, as I recall, was that around 93, 94, you did something at the Boston Center for Adult Education?
Yeah, it was a...
I remember seeing the poster, but
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was after my autobiography came out. Actually, it was a Boston K&S speaker college company that asked me if I wanted to do lectures, and I said no. Mm-hmm. And they said, well, you can do whatever you want for an hour. So I developed this piece, all from my book, my autobiography, yep. Riders on the Storm. But I, played drums while I read and turned the lights off and lit incense and... So that was real fun, as I recall.
That's great. Do you remember when that was? Was that right about the time period?
Probably
early 90s.
Early 90s.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's great. Do you have you're playing with a bass player in this group?
Sure am.
What would you say the back in the day? I guess the Doors had. On record, you guys had some different bass players play with you, including Jerry Sheff.
Here's how it went. We actually auditioned bass players, and we just found we sounded like another blues band, like the Stones. And then Ray found this keyboard bass. This was before Moog synthesizers. Mm-hmm. And it was sort of mushy, but we thought, okay, we don't need a bass. But in the studio, we needed the punch that came from the strings of bass guitar. So we had various studio musicians overdub Ray's left-handed bass lines. Mm. And Jerry Sheff eventually was one of them.
How did you find? You just called the scene for session guys?
Yeah. But Jerry, he had played with Elvis, and actually, he was on L.A. Woman, and I think there's a line from L.A. Woman that he stuck in Hunka Hunka Burn and Love, Elvis's cut. For you aficionados.
we could listen deeply to that. There was, I can say, I was told, and I actually was able to find one of the articles that you had penned some articles for The Nation and New Reader.
Yes.
And I read the one about your feelings on commercials in music. Can you tell the folks about that? Because I thought it was a
yeah.
well thought out, right on statement.
That article got me in a lot of trouble. Good trouble. I wrote it. I sent it to Rolling Stone, and they went, "Oh, provocative! This is interesting. We should have a series on this, but it's too wild. We can't do it." So then I get The Nation to publish it, and then later, Rolling Stone and the London Guardian and on, they all syndicate it. So I was real pleased. But it turned out to be an exhibit in this horrendous lawsuit I was involved in with Ray and Robbie, my former bandmates, for running off with the Doors' name. And they used the Nation article, and they countersued me and said that I wasn't living up to my fiduciary duty as a partner and making the max of money for the corp. Ooh. So I got in trouble, but I'm proud of it. What the hell, you know?
You want to tell some people who might not have seen the your basic gist of the. Now, was there one article, or was there a series of articles?
There was one.
Okay.
But I've written other things on other subjects. Mm-hmm. Yeah. The Utney Reader thing was on Elvin Jones, John Coltrane's drummer.
Wow.
What were your? I guess we could try to find it, but how would you say the influence of Elvin and your thoughts on the great Elvin Jones?
Oh, well, as a teenager, I saw Coltrane many times. I had a fake ID from Tijuana and got in these jazz clubs, and I noticed this conversation Elvin had with Coltrane, and I didn't deliberately try and do it with Morrison, but it seeped in. It freed me up seeing Elvin's wild, crazy polyrhythms, and it made me stop the beat in When the Music's Over and just jab at the drums while Jim said, "What have they done to the earth?" Stabbed her and ripped her and bit her. And I don't know. I think that came from free jazz, you know.
Sure.
So.
Well, yeah, it could work in a dramatic type of scenario that way. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell me about your acting work.
Well, acting, that was a side road.
Is that a loose term or what?
It was a side road. I mean, you know, after a big peak like the Doors, you know, some folks self-destruct, and I found myself in this acting class with 14 people, and I was as scared as Madison Square Garden, and I didn't have any drums for security. So that I later realized, I want to write. The acting made me realize I want to write. So that was a segue, but I had an incredible teacher that was very wise. So,
one thing I've always loved about your playing, John, is definitely, like you said, you definitely have a great sense of dynamics and a great feel on the drums. Do you think that can be a feel for a drummer? I know I played with a guy who seemed to be, the concept of feel was definitely lost. Do you think that's something that can be developed, or you either got it or you don't?
Wow. Mighty slim. That's a real perceptive question, because I always say that dynamics is my main thing, because technique is not everything, thank God. I'm not the fastest drummer in the world, but I think dynamics is human. You know, a lot of pianissimo, fortissimo, all that. It's like it's a conversation, and that's how I play. So. Can it be developed?
Like your feel, including dynamics.
I think so. Listening to other drummers and stuff, you learn not to play at one monotone, and I think that's where it's at. But, you know, there's drum machines out there, and a lot of hip-hop is that way, which most kids, that generation, the new generation, are kind of used to a machine feel. Which is kind of disturbing. I get it, though, because the lyrics are great. They're real political, and I like that. But if you want to see folks who kind of worked on their craft for years, come on down to the Doubletree.
African-based percussion and just, you know, world music in general. I mean, that's such an incredible craft as well as a party, essentially. So,
well, in fact. Aziz Faye from Senegal, whose brothers play with Youssou N'Dour, made his own Sabar drums that he'll be playing tonight. And he's a dancer, an incredible African dancer. He'll be doing all that stuff.
Oh, wow, that sounds...
You know, like the sticks, I buy my sticks in a shop. He carves his from twigs on a tree. It's great.
That's great. You know, I wanted to mention that maybe you had been contacting them, but there's a school in Boston. Actually, it started in Philadelphia, but there's a Boston chapter called the School of Rock. Have you heard of them?
Does this have anything to do with Jack Black?
No. Actually, the Jack Black movie was based upon the school, but what the school does is it takes 7 to 18-year-olds, and it has them learn, has them learn old rock stuff, and put on shows. And they're actually going to do a Doors show on Saturday.
Oh,
and
I wish I was here. I'm going to Philly tomorrow.
I wish you were too. I was wondering what advice you could give for a kid trying, a 10-year-old kid trying to learn your old drum parts.
Jeez. What advice? I don't know. Just play with your heart open.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, in just a little bit, we'll even have some tickets to give away to tonight's show with Tribal Jazz at Scullers. And do we want to hear something from what John's up to with this?
Yeah.
This is a really interesting project. So
that sounds great. Let's hear the. What's the name of the first cut?
First cut is called Sky Trails. Actually, it's the cut we'll open with tonight at 8 p.m. So. And
you're listening to WMBR in Cambridge.
Okay, let's check that out. Is definitely, like you said, you definitely have a great sense of dynamics and a great feel on the drums. Do you think that can be a feel for a drummer? I know I played with a guy who seemed to be, the concept of feel was definitely lost. Do you think that that's something that can be developed, or you either got it or you don't?
Wow. Mighty slim. That's a real perceptive question, because I always say that dynamics is my main thing, because technique is not everything, thank God. I'm not the fastest drummer in the world, but I think dynamics is human. A lot of pianissimo, fortissimo, all that. It's like it's a conversation, and that's how I play. So, can it be developed?
Like your feel, including dynamics.
I think so. Listening to other drummers and stuff, you learn not to play at one monotone, and I think that's where it's at. But, there's drum machines out there, and a lot of hip-hop is that way, which most kids, that generation, the new generation, are kind of used to a machine feel. Which is kind of disturbing. I get it, though, because the lyrics are great. They're real political, and I like that. But if you want to see folks who kind of worked on their craft for years, come on down to the Doubletree.
African-based percussion and just world music in general. I mean, that's such an incredible craft as well as a party, essentially. So,
well, in fact. Aziz Faye from Senegal, whose brothers play with Youssou N'Dour, made his own Sabar drums that he'll be playing tonight. And he's a dancer, an incredible African dancer. He'll be doing all that stuff.
Oh, wow, that sounds...
like the sticks, I buy my sticks in a shop. He carves his from twigs on a tree. It's great.
That's great. I wanted to mention that maybe you had been contacting them, but there's a school in Boston. Actually, it started in Philadelphia, but there's a Boston chapter called the School of Rock. Have you heard of them?
Does this have anything to do with Jack Black?
No. Actually, the Jack Black movie was based upon the school, but what the school does is it takes 7 to 18-year-olds, and it has them learn, has them learn old rock stuff. And put on shows, and they're actually going to do a Doors show on Saturday.
Oh,
and
I wish I was here. I'm going to Philly tomorrow.
I wish you were too. I was wondering what advice you could give for a kid trying, a 10-year-old kid trying to learn your old drum parts?
Jeez. What advice? I don't know. Just play with your heart open.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, in just a little bit, we'll even have some tickets to give away to tonight's show with Tribal Jazz at Scullers. And do we want to hear something from what John's up to with this?
Yeah.
This is a really interesting project. So
that sounds great. Let's hear the. What's the name of the first cut?
First cut is called Sky Trails. Actually, it's the cut we'll open with tonight at 8 p.m. So.
And you're listening to WMBR in Cambridge.
Okay, let's check that. And John Densmore and Tribal Jazz.
Very nice.
A nice tune called Sky Trails. That was outstanding.
Who was the keyboardist there, sounding somewhat like McCoy Tyner there?
Oh, nice. Quinn Johnson, a young Turk, half my age. I just wanted to thank Bruce for letting us go over into his show a little bit here. We're having so much fun.
Yes. Thank you indeed, Bruce. And Bruce, are you...
oh, here he comes.
Is that...
Yeah, well, I actually saw the Doors years and years ago, obviously years and years ago, in Columbia, Maryland, with Earth Opera for their warm-up act. And of course,
wow.
Peter Rowan from Earth Opera was interviewed on WMBR last
Thursday, yeah.
Oh, uh-huh.
Of course, one of the legends of the Doors, the rumors, is of Morrison's exposing himself in Miami. And
rubbish.
Please continue. You were there. Tell us more.
Well, he didn't do it because if he had, he would have tripped, Bruce. No, Jim was definitely drunk and being very political because he had just seen Julian Beck's Living Theater, and he was pretending that he might expose himself or whatever, but mainly it was a political drunken rant. But afterwards, we paid some of the police for the hat they lost, and we were laughing in the dressing room, and we all went home. Mm-hmm. And then later, a warrant was issued for Jim's arrest, and I think some of the parents heard this crazy concert, and they heard about it and kind of wanted to get these hippies, and as a result, actually 30,000 people had a rally for decency at the Orange Bowl, with Jackie Gleason and Anita Bryant, known homophobic, saying we got to have morality, these hippies, blah, blah, blah. And we were on Nixon's hit list, so it was political.
Why were you on Nixon's hit list?
Well, ask him. I mean, we were...
He wouldn't tell me.
Good company, Tom Hayden, Jane Fonda. It was, I was proud, actually.
Nice.
So, the country was so polarized against the Vietnam War, it was outrageous. And feels a little the same today, although the country's now pretty much against this new one. So hopefully we can sort that out.
Yeah.
I'm kind of excited that the Democratic candidate is kind of emblematic of my new band, A Global Village Into Himself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it's true.
Yeah.
Jim Morrison and I grew up in adjacent communities, and so I read Morrison bios sometimes, or Doors books, to see what they say about growing up in that area. And the stuff I've seen has been absolutely laughable in its absurdity, the getting stuff so wrong. Do you have any comments to make about?
Well, you got to tell me, what, Florida, is that?
No, this was in Northern Virginia. Outside Washington, D.C.
Okay.
That's where he went to high school.
Okay. Yeah, being a military kid, he moved around a lot, so it was hard to keep track. Well, you have to answer the question, what was laughable and what's the truth?
Well, they made the community I grew up in sound like it was incredibly yuppie and glitzy. It was not, it was.
Wow. Well... I don't really know. I wasn't there.
But have you found Morrison, the books about the Doors or about Morrison in particular, to be particularly reliable? Are there any you would particularly recommend to people aside from your own book?
Oh, I was just going to recommend mine, yeah. Danny Sugarman's book, No One Here Gets Out Alive, is all true, but it's just listing the binges that Jim went on, so you kind of wonder, how did this guy ever write any sensitive poetry? Mm-hmm. And the books in the last few years, Stephen Davis or something said he was gay in the first sentence. That's a crock. So, it's a cottage industry.
Yeah, but we can mention your book that you wrote back about, 1980, I believe, was it, that area?
No, I think it came out in 1990, and then early 90s I was here doing this college lecture thing for Writers on the Storm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What did you think of the movie?
I said to Oliver Stone, I said, I don't remember all those naked girls running on stage. We would have stopped playing. What is that? The poetic license? I thought Val was great. Val Kilmer gave me the chills. He was so close to Jim. It's creepy. He should have been nominated.
Wow. Well, anyway, John Densmore is here with us at WMBR, and Bruce Sylvester is graciously letting us go into the Troubadour program slot here. And we're talking with John about the Doors and about tribal jazz, his band who's performing tonight at Scholars Jazz Club. It's I believe it may be just one show. It was originally 2 show times, but I think it's really one continuous one beginning about 8 o'clock.
Right, one long show.
Yeah.
Thanks, Eli.
Yeah. Be a lot of fun. And we're going to give some tickets away for that as well. And John has a little brain teaser in mind for proving that you know your stuff to if you'd like to go to Scholars tonight.
We do. Tribal Jazz does play one Doors song, and we don't sing it, and it's disguised as a salsa, and I make the audience guess, so you guys have to guess, but it has to do with your recent weather last night that made me 3 hours late on my flight in here.
If you can identify that song from that clue, you can go see John Densmore's Tribal Jazz playing great jazz world music tonight at Scholars Jazz Club, 617-253-8810. Give it a shot and see if you can identify that one Doors tune that they do in a salsa instrumental style, having to do with the conditions outside last night.
The conditions usually here. Is it instrumental on the CD?
Yes.
Let's check that out.
It's in Spanish, the title, Los Tormentos. Oh.
You're gonna get all the people who could translate. Let's check that out. Here we go.
Yeah, congratulations to our ticket winner out there who is going to see Tribal Jazz live tonight at the Scholars Jazz Club in Alston. And, they identified that one. And, well, not completely a cappella. There was somebody chanting the name there at the end.
Actually, on this album, we do Riders on the Storm twice. And you played the Riders on the Storm, but there is another cut called Los Tormentas, which is an instrumental salsa version of Riders on the Storm.
Oh.
But what's pretty cool is that voice in the background is Jim. And when he recorded the vocal, Bruce Botnick and I, he's our old Doors engineer, we both had this idea. Say, hey, Jim, listen, we got 2 great takes just for fun. Why don't you go out there and just whisper the whole track vocally? And that is on the original version subliminally. If you listen to the Doors Riders on the Storm, and now you know it, you'll hear it under there. It's real subliminal. So I got that from Bruce and got permission from Ray and Robbie and stuck it in here under the flute.
That sounds great. What do you make of the rumors that of people who think Jim is still alive?
I saw him
the last Tuesday
turned from a David's Michelangelo into Allen Ginsberg in 6 years, physically.
Sure.
And so he was an alcoholic, So it's kind of, I don't like that rumor.
Okay. And before we go, you were telling me you wrote a recent piece for the LA Times?
Yes. If you go to the latimes.com and then put my name in, you'll get, among other subjects, John Densmore's jazz education. And it's an article I wrote about. Here I am playing Scullers and other jazz clubs, and they were the places I haunted as a teenager, and I saw Coltrane with Elvin Jones, and now I'm on the same stage. Oh, my God, humbly, let me tell you. So it's kind of a nice full circle.
That's great.
One more thing is that on this station and in many other places too, a lot of people have been doing tributes to the great late pioneer of rock and roll, Bo Diddley, and his beat came up in the Doors music sometimes. Just wondering how he and what he really brought to the world in the '50s influenced you.
Oh, he was one of the giants, and I got to work with him once, and he was telling me, no, you don't play the maracas that way. You play them in a circular motion to get that Bo Diddley thing. But I would say that Touch Me, the beat is faster, dun, 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 but I made the choice to play it on the tom-toms because of Bo Diddley. So he's in all of us.
Yeah, the live version of Break On Through is a little bit influenced by his sound too. It sounded like, to me anyway, to my ears maybe, I don't know, maybe not yours. But,
could. Subliminal.
And then of course you guys covered Who Do You Love on your live shows as
exactly.
well. Exactly.
And walked 47 miles of barbed wire, got a cobra snake for a necktie, chimney made on top out of a human skull, who do you love? I mean, of course the Lizard King would want to do those lyrics.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, we're about to wrap up here. We definitely want to thank you for your time and coming down. It's definitely been an honor.
Really fun
to have you come down here. And John Densmore's Tribal Jazz will be playing tonight over at Scholars Jazz Club and
8 p.m.
8 p.m. show.
Yeah.
We're going to rock out.